Disclaimer, this video was supposed to come out on the release date for Monster Hunter World. Fortunately, even without our help, Monster Hunter World has managed to surpass all expectations. Unfortunately, we didn't know that was going to happen. So despite this, please enjoy this video anyway.
Hey, yo, Antonis!
What?
We gonna let a fat nibble hunt. Oh, shit. Hey. Oh, shit, we up in here. Oh. Ladies and gentlemen. Hit it to the dice. Hit it to the dice. Hit it to the dice. Girls, you waiting for this one. You ain't ready for this. We about to bring it to you loud and live and live. Here we go. Hit it to the dice. Hit it.
Ow!
To the dice.
Ow! What are you doing? Ow! I literally didn't do anything! Why are you doing this? Why? My lawyers are gonna hear about this!
Monster Hunter World is finally coming out on a console we're giving a shit about. Now, fanboys, I can already feel the residual hate emanating from those Cheeto-caked keys as you slam every manner of slur and curse into them in a vain attempt to prove me wrong. But let me be the first to stop you from wasting your time, because this homie ain't budging. Nothing will ever top the sheer excitement I experienced from Sony's E3 presentation last year at the realization that Capcom had finally decided to bring its lauded franchise back into the hands of console peasants the world over. It was a glorious occasion to finally witness the pure, unmitigated primal violence against anime dinos the series is well known for, fully realized in glorious 4K. And yet, even when hit with a trailer as wildly promising as this one, there was an overwhelming majority of dissenters amongst the general internet crowd. As they fired off one accusation after another of the studio's potential incompetence and mishandlings just for a chance to grab at that sweet casual market booty. And in a way, I guess you can say their fears are certainly well-founded, seeing as how it's no secret that the franchise's general success has largely been due to its no-holds-barred hardcore gameplay, so it only makes sense that some folks would get cold feet at the notion of a potential westernized release. Not to mention that the fact that Monster Hunter is already a wildly successful franchise in the East, sporting a ridiculous 40 million plus lifetime sales and an entire chunk of a theme park for crying out loud. But with all that said, an overwhelming majority of these sales have only ever been spread solely amongst the Asian territories, as for one reason or another, it's never been able to hit its full stride over here in the West. To call it niche would be somewhat insulting to its already plenty large fan base, but it just hasn't been enough to go toe-to-toe with some of the modern-day Western juggernauts in the same genre, such as Destiny. Which, if you ask me, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because the beautiful simplicity of a concept like Hit It Till It Dies 2018 should speak to the hearts and minds of every God-fearing American who enjoys one of the nation's favorite pastimes of vivisecting the local flora and fauna until one of them shows up on the endangered species list. However, a number of different variables such as its barrier of entry and platforms of choice have always been obstacles far too large to surmount in the Western territories. However, slowly but surely, Capcom and Sony have been generating hype the only way they know how, via a good old-fashioned marketing campaign in the form of a guided video series all narrated by none other than Captain Hook himself.
Hello again, hunters, and welcome to the Coral Highlands.
3 entire betas for would-be hunters to seek their teeth into, and, this guy, who probably does a way better job at selling this game than I ever could. But even after it's all been said and done, it seems like there's still a few people who aren't hit the drinking the mega Kool-Aid, as it were. So, as your local harbinger of meme-filled chaos and death's very own messenger, I've decided to take it upon myself to bid you welcome into the depths of bliss and addiction by attempting to sell you a one-stop ticket all aboard the Monster Hunter World hype train. And I'll be doing so via one of the most wholesome content templates that any video game-centric channel worth its weight in gold would use. A top X amount of reasons list detailing the various reasons why this game is going to titillate your little giblies. And it's brought to you by WatchMojo.com. Let me paint a hypothetical scenario for you. After much deliberation, you and your monster ganking crew set forth on a journey to eliminate the Rathalos just one more time, because Larry's so fucking close to finally getting him a full set, but it's obvious Archie's has forsaken him, and the only thing he can do is beg forgiveness as he buries the sharp end of his blade into the hide of another goddamn monster for the upteenth hundredth time. You begin the search, running from one low-poly instance area to another, navigating the flat landscapes as you and your homies scour the horizon for the big barb booty in the sky, when at last, the beast harks, and fuck is he pissed! After letting out a mighty roar, deafening and stunning your calamitous crew of cucamongas, he flies at your squad full force, only to send you tumbling back into a fucking loading screen. No one paintballed him, no one defended in time, and now you've got to get back up and follow his dumb, scaly ass across the map once more for another frustrating amount of unceremonious downtime. I'd be lying to you if I said that my short time with Generations wasn't punctuated by many instances in which this was the case, because frankly, I'm kind of shit at Monster Hunter in general, so being thrust into a position where even the slightest misstep can send you careening into the next area was never my idea of fun. There's also the fact that even without the prehistoric ass beating these beasties can deal you, you'd be hard-pressed to find areas that didn't at least require you to run off to another segmented part of the map where the monster lay, some 4 loading screens in the opposite direction of camp. The whole thing just felt very video gaming and did nothing but disconnect me from the experience as a whole every damn time. Thankfully, now that Capcom is wielding the great power of the next generation home console systems, the world of Monster Hunter has seen one of its largest facelifts to date, as gone are its haphazard semblance of instanced areas replaced with large, complex zones, encompassing many labyrinthian turns with an increased focus on verticality. And the best part? It's all seamless! No more fucking loading screens. Well, except for the one, I guess. That's a given. But that isn't the only brilliant change that's been brought to the table, as Capcom's willingness to finally bring the franchise in the modern era has made it possible for the Monhun team to flex its creative muscles and fashion a world dominated by an ever-changing ecosystem. Truly, the world aspect of this game is easily one of its strongest selling points, as it really hasn't been an environment as vibrant and teeming with life in a Monster Hunter game in, well, ever, to be honest. Sure, the core gameplay loop has you and your buds hacking biddies to shreds as you build your character towards going after larger, stranger prey or what have you, but do yourself a favor and just take a minute to breathe in that dank, atmosphere-laden air while you walk around these new zones and watch all manner of crazy shit pop off. Animals run about to and fro, going about their daily lives without a care in the world. Larger predators scour the lands for food to feed their young, leaving behind trails of mucus and footprints along the way that you can use to track them into their humble abodes, where you'll most definitely be carving up their outwards for their innards. The world lives and breathes alongside you, and man, it's a sight to behold. My favorite design decision so far has been the inclusion of the Turf Wars mechanic, a scenario that can take place during a hunt or just happen naturally in your environment as you futz about. Let's say your quarry prances from one area to another, and either in direct retaliation to your absolute insistence that you must tear apart its hindquarters and then fashion a silly hat from them, or because it's got literally nothing better to do, there's an off chance, and by off I mean a pretty damn good chance, that while it attempts to saw it off in the opposite direction, they may encounter a beastie that is way fucking bigger than it is, and unfortunately for them, there's never been a good enough comeback to the phrase, "You just rolled up to the wrong neighborhood, player." Personally, I'm never going to get sick of watching Anjanath beat a Jagras within half an inch of its life by whipping it about the place by its throat like a marionette, but I've always been into kinkier shit, so that might just be a me thing. Finally, for the first time ever, the environment itself can act as an entirely new weapon of choice to the avid hunter, as destructible environments give way to all manner of things like giant boulders you can bring down upon the heads of your prey, trees that give way to natural vine netting to entrap your foes, or cliff faces you can gracefully leap off of into a full swan dive towards the beast's head, where you can then begin to mount it and ask it who's your daddy. Glorious. Truth be told, there's still so much more to go over, but without a doubt, easily one of the best reasons to get excited about this game has to be its new and improved world. As beautiful as it is dangerously fun, it's a wonder it's taken the series this long to get here, but I'm glad it finally has. So, it kind of goes without saying that Monster Hunter has never been a traditionally easy series to get into. You could sit someone down with a 20-minute tutorial video aided by a 50-plus slide PowerPoint presentation of the ins and outs of slicing up dino butts, but you'd just be barely scraping the surface of a game that has far more going on underneath the hood than most are normally ready for. The franchise is also rather notorious for its spectacularly slow starts, as every beginning mission is crafted to help new players dip their toes ever so gently into the giant pool of craziness that is this franchise's inevitable endgame, which is basically just a min-max paradise of theory crafting as you try to piece together which items dole out which buffs under certain circumstances, such as running around with low health, as dictated by the skills in your armor and charms, which you use alongside any of the 14 different weapon types, each affixed with their own elemental properties, and 4 unique styles that dictate how you approach a battle, and oh my fucking god. This can be especially frustrating for returning players who just want to get to the good parts, because, I mean, come on, no one on this godforsaken planet actually enjoys gathering missions. You know, aside from those weirdos who pour countless hours into Stardew Valley, but fuck them anyway, they're not real people. Normally when a development team is met with the challenge of having to curtail its previous entry systems to make it easier for the casual audience to pick up, this can normally result in one of two things. Either A, the series' gameplay loop traditionally stays the same, but new systems are introduced alongside many quality of life improvements for the purpose of attempting to better teach the player just how to actually sit down and play the game that they're meant to. Or B, an absolute bastardization of the series by dumbing it down to such a ridiculous point in a vain attempt to attract venom-spinning 12-year-olds geeking out on all manner of overpriced energy drinks and junk food that normally poison the well of internet gaming as a whole, only to completely miss the point as to what made their game so enjoyable in the first place, and effectively create something that no one likes and destroys their credibility as a development team entirely, forever besmirching the long and storied history of their most memorable works. But thankfully, the Monster Hunter staff has adopted the former approach and not the latter development philosophy, as Capcom had decided that instead of just gutting the systems that were already in place, they're attempting to change them entirely and running the risk of alienating their already firmly established fan base. They should instead focus on bringing those new types of players up to speed with the game, and incentivize veterans on helping up-and-coming hunters to do the same. There's so much shit here that seems rather innocuous on paper, but when you finally sit down and get your grubby little mitts in the game, you really feel the amount of care and devotion the team put towards making your hunting life far easier in comparison to previous titles. Don't have time to just sit around and watch your character get forced into a can animation just to gather shit? Just run by that nonsense and pick it up, fucker! Is going through menus and crafting pots eating up more time than you'd like? Of course it is! Crafting's fucking boring! Let the game do that shit for you! What do you mean you showed up with the wrong equipment and now you're about as useful as a YouTube partnership? Homie, don't sweat it! Just get over to the tent, change out your gear, and get back to beating some primordial ass! It really feels like every single element, from the way armor and weapons crafting has been made easier to understand via upgrade trees, to even the very way you move about the environment, all of the systems have been made in such a way to get you straight into the thick of the shit, so you can cut to the brass tacks and start enjoying that crazy visceral combat that you oh so crave. Elemental discharge.
Fucking ew!
Has the West End gaming market gotten you down? Are gambling-inspired loot boxes ruining an experience you once enjoyed but now resent with every fiber of your being? Well, saddle up, Hunter, because Capcom's got the cure for what's ailing you. Monster Hunter, and it's back and bigger than ever with tons of hours of fun and enjoyment for you and your boys. Take part in perilous cooperative boss battles against dozens of terrifying foes, try on all manner of weapon and armor combinations to create the build that most suits you, and take part in one of the largest growing international communities in the game to date. All of this under one unanimously popular pricing model that's sure to assuage your worries about your country's ever so miserable economy. You heard it here, folks. Instead of charging you out the wazoos for even the tiniest of content editions, all you need is a copy of the game, and then an all-new subsequent content updates that include monsters, quests, and so much more will be available to you for the ridiculously low price of free. That's right. Now, how's that for a deal? If you were to tell me 10 years ago that Capcom, the progenitors of easily one of the scummiest business practices ever conceived by way of on-disc DLC lockouts, would invariably end up being this generation's savior when it comes to the business modeling of games as a medium, I'd hit you upside the head with a foam greatsword until you weren't breathing anymore, but here we are. In a day and age where publishers are attempting to squeeze gamers dry for every single one of their hard-earned pennies, the fact that the Monster Hunter team has felt the need to outwardly express their commitment to free post-game support is both genuinely terrifying and incredibly relieving to hear, as it says far more about the state of gaming than any long-form video essay could. Because of this, there are quite a few folks that have become disenfranchised with the likes of Activision and EA, as it's becoming quite clear that no matter what, if they can manipulate any sort of numbers in the game that you love, and force you into some kind of microtransaction tomfoolery, they are most certainly gonna fucking do so. For quite some time now, many have been looking for signs of any kind of out as they wait as patiently as can be until their favorite games finally resemble somewhat of a playable state, while others are just looking for another game to scratch the itch of heavy action-based looting. I think it's become clearer to many that Monster Hunter is a franchise worth giving a shit about. It's always been on the radars of many gamers, but those that knew couldn't quite come to grips with the fact that it was majorly a mobile experience, leaving many to unfairly judge it as being something not worth their time. Now, with a release built from the ground up as a fully fledged home console experience, coupled along with a PC version waiting in the wings to attract even more to the fold, now's a better time than ever for Capcom to confidently step onto the scene and sweep up the fledgling masses by letting every ignorant motherfucker in the biz know what's the haps. That's not to say that the Monster Hunter franchise hasn't had its fair share of what I'd call dubious mishandlings, what with several games being released on an almost annual basis, as to keep the money train that is this franchise a-rolling. but you can bet that any pay-gated release coming out of the team in the following months is going to include a very substantial amount of content that is sure to keep you just as invested as the base game would and for just as long. I mean, G-Rank isn't even here yet. It's gotta come out at some point, right? No matter which way you slice it, Monster Hunter World is shaping up to be not only one of the franchise's best, but potentially one of the best titles of the year. I mean, it's just started. My time with the beta has only made the wait so much harder, and I hope with this small video I can now punch your ticket as you too hop aboard this hype train, because it's about to get rolling. So what say you, Hunter? Are you in?